I pulled my Mercedes into the circular driveway of the Whitmore estate at exactly 3:45 in the afternoon, 15 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The November sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns, and I could see guests already gathering near the rose garden where Connor and Isabel would exchange their vows. I had chosen my outfit a month ago, a sophisticated Chanel suit in pearl gray, elegant but understated, perfect for the mother of the father of the groom. My hair was styled in my usual sleek bob, platinum blonde going gracefully silver at the temples. At 58, I had learned that true elegance came from confidence, not from trying too hard. In the passenger seat sat a cream-colored envelope containing the deed to a $2.3 million apartment in Manhattan's Upper West Side. I had purchased it 2 months ago, had the title transferred to Connor and Isabel's names, and wrapped it in ivory paper tied with gold ribbon. It would be my surprise gift to them, their first real home together, already paid for, no mortgage to burden their young marriage. I smiled thinking about Connor's face when he opened it. My grandson had always been sweet, thoughtful, the kind of young man who still hugged his grandmother without embarrassment, even at 23. I checked my appearance one final time in the rearview mirror. Pearl earrings that Richard had given me for our 20th anniversary. My Patek Philippe watch catching the light. Makeup subtle and flawless. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman who had built a $47 million company from nothing, who carried herself with the quiet dignity that came from knowing her own worth. I grabbed my clutch and the gift, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the estate's entrance where other guests were streaming in, their chatter and laughter floating on the crisp autumn air. That's when I saw Derek. My son appeared at the top of the stone steps leading to the entrance, and something about his posture made my stomach tighten. He wasn't smiling. His face had that pinched, uncomfortable expression I had seen before, usually right before he asked me for money or admitted to another failed business venture. But this was different. There was determination in the set of his jaw, and behind him I could see Nora, his wife, watching from inside the doorway with her arms crossed. Derek came down the steps quickly, intercepting me before I could reach the entrance. Several guests turned to watch, their conversations trailing off. I felt the first flutter of unease, but I kept my smile in place, lifting my hand in greeting. "Derek, honey, the place looks absolutely beautiful. You and Nora did such a wonderful job with the planning." He didn't return my smile. Instead, he glanced back at the entrance where more guests were gathering, then looked at me with an expression that made my heart start to pound. When he spoke, his voice was low but audible enough that the couple standing nearest to us, I recognized them as the Ashtons, friends of the Whitmore family, could hear every word. "Mom, I need to talk to you. There's been a situation." I shifted the gift to my other arm, my smile faltering. "What kind of situation? Is Connor all right? Is Isabel—" "They're fine. It's just—" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he had done since childhood, when anxious. "Look, this is really difficult, but Nora and we've been thinking a lot about today, and we talked to Connor and Isabel, and we all agreed that maybe it would be better if—" The way he trailed off made my chest constrict. I could see more people stopping now, turning toward us. The murmur of conversation had dropped to almost nothing. Everyone was watching the mother of the father of the groom being pulled aside at the entrance. "Better if what, Derek?" He took a breath, and I saw something harden in his eyes. Not cruelty exactly, but a kind of forced resolution, like he had rehearsed this moment and was determined to see it through no matter what. "I'm sorry, Mom, but we decided not to put your name on the guest list." The words didn't make sense at first. I actually laughed, a short, confused sound. "What do you mean? Derek, I'm your mother. Connor is my grandson. Of course I'm on the list." "You're not." His voice was firmer now, and I saw Nora step out onto the landing behind him, her phone in her hand, her expression unreadable behind oversized sunglasses. "We thought it would be less stressful for you, less complicated. You know, with your age and everything." The world seemed to tilt slightly. I was aware of how many people were watching us now. The Ashtons had stopped pretending not to listen. Behind them, I could see Vivian Whitmore, Isabel's mother, frozen on the steps with her mouth slightly open. Other guests were turning, nudging each other, creating a ripple of attention that spread across the entrance area like a wave. 176 people. That's how many guests had been invited to this wedding. I knew because I had reviewed the final count when I wrote the check to the venue coordinator. 176 people, and at that moment it felt like every single one of them was staring at me. Derek, my voice came out steady despite the roaring in my ears. I paid for this wedding. Every flower, every chair, every bottle of champagne. $180,000. I know, Mom, and we're grateful. We really are. But this isn't about money. This is about what's best for everyone. Nora and I have been working really hard on establishing healthy boundaries. And our therapist said, "Your therapist said to bar me from my own grandson's wedding?" The gift was suddenly heavy in my hands. Inside that envelope was a deed worth more than this entire event, more than everything Derek had earned in the last 5 years combined. The wedding I financed? See, this is exactly what we're talking about. Nora's voice cut through from the landing, sharp and clear. She descended the steps to stand beside Derek, and I saw her hand slip into his, a unified front. Everything always comes back to money with you, Margot. You can't just give something without holding it over our heads. I looked at my daughter-in-law, this woman with her bleached hair and her carefully curated Instagram aesthetic, this woman who had come from nothing and latched onto my son like a parasite, who had spent 8 years slowly poisoning him against me. I looked at her standing there in her designer dress. Zimmerman, I recognized it. Probably $1,500 that she had charged to one of the credit cards I had given them for emergencies, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. I have never, I said quietly, held anything over anyone's head. I have given because I love my family, because I wanted to help. That's not how it feels, Mom. Derek's voice had taken on a whiny quality, the tone of a child explaining why he had to do something hurtful. It feels like you're always trying to fix things with money, like you don't think I can handle my own life. Nora and I talked about this a lot, and we realized that maybe your generosity has actually been holding us back from growing as a couple, as a family. We need space to become our own people. Behind me, I heard someone whisper. The words carried in the quiet. "Oh my God, she's being turned away." Another voice. "That's the grandmother, isn't it? The one who paid for everything?" My face felt hot despite the cool November air. This was humiliation, pure and crystalline. This was my son, whom I had raised alone after Richard died, whom I had supported through 3 failed businesses and countless personal crises, whom I had loved with every fiber of my being, standing in front of 176 witnesses and telling me I was not welcome at my grandson's wedding. I thought about making a scene. God knows I wanted to. I wanted to scream at him about every sacrifice I had made, every check I had written, every time I had bitten my tongue when Nora made her snide comments about my parenting or my age or my controlling nature. I wanted to throw the $2.3 million gift at his feet and watch his face when he realized what he was rejecting. But I was Margot Sinclair. I had built a company from nothing. I had negotiated with venture capitalists and corporate raiders. I had sat across from men who tried to intimidate me in boardrooms and smiled while I outmaneuvered them. I had buried my husband with dry eyes and kept my company running without missing a beat. I was not going to give these people the satisfaction of seeing me break down. So instead, I took a breath. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a man I no longer recognized. Somewhere along the way, the sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions and call me his best friend had been replaced by this stranger with weak eyes and a weaker spine. "All right, Derek," I said. My voice was calm, measured, perfectly controlled. "If that's what you want." I saw surprise flicker across his face. He had expected a fight. Nora's grip on his hand tightened, and I saw her exchange a quick glance with him that said, "See, I told you she'd make it about her." "Mom, don't be like that. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm not making it anything." I shifted the gift in my arms one final time, feeling the weight of that deed, that gesture of love that would now never be given. I said it's all right. I hope Connor and Isabel have a beautiful ceremony. I turned before he could respond, before anyone could see the tremor starting in my hands. The walk back to my car felt like miles instead of yards. I could feel every eye on my back, could hear the whispers erupting behind me like wildfire. By tomorrow, everyone in our social circle would know. Margot Sinclair, barred from her own grandson's wedding. Margot Sinclair, so controlling and overbearing that her own family couldn't stand to have her present. I placed the gift back in the passenger seat, started the engine, and drove away from the Whitmore estate with my head high and my eyes dry. I had learned a long time ago that tears were a luxury you saved for private moments. The 40-minute drive back to Greenwich passed in a blur of tree-lined roads and fading afternoon light. My house, the 6-bedroom colonial that Richard and I had custom-built 30 years ago, felt cavernous and cold when I walked in. I set my clutch on the entry table, next to the silver-framed photo of Derek's high school graduation, where he was smiling at the camera with his arm around my shoulders. I remembered that day so clearly. He had thanked me in his valedictorian speech, said that everything he had achieved was because of his mother's unwavering support. I walked through the empty rooms, past the living room where we used to have family dinners, past Richard's study that I still kept exactly as he had left it, and into the library. This was my sanctuary, the room where I had planned business strategies and weathered personal storms. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a bay window overlooking the garden, and Richard's leather armchair that still smelled faintly of his cologne, even after 4 years. I sat down in that chair and finally allowed myself to feel it. The humiliation, the betrayal, the crushing loneliness of being a woman whose only child had just declared her presence unwanted. My Apple Watch buzzed with a high heart rate alert, 142 beats per minute. I pulled the small bottle of medication from my clutch, the beta blockers for the cardiac arrhythmia I had been diagnosed with 6 months ago. The diagnosis I hadn't told anyone about because who was there to tell? Derek, who called maybe once a week and only when he needed something? Connor, who was sweet but distant, absorbed in his own young life? I swallowed the pill dry and closed my eyes, willing my heart to slow down, willing the pressure in my chest to ease. This was stress-induced, the cardiologist had warned me. I needed to avoid situations that spiked my blood pressure, that sent my heart racing. I nearly laughed at the irony. The house was so quiet I could hear the antique clock in the hallway ticking. Tick, 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 marking the seconds of my isolation. Richard's chair embraced me like a memory, and I let myself imagine, just for a moment, what he would have said if he were here. Richard, who had been my partner in every sense of the word, who had understood ambition and sacrifice, who had loved Derek fiercely but had never coddled him the way I had. "You spoil that boy," he used to tell me. "Love him, support him, but make him earn some things, Margot. Make him understand the value of what he receives." I hadn't listened. After Richard died, Derek had become my entire focus. Every need he expressed, I met. Every crisis, I solved. Every debt, I covered. I told myself it was love. I told myself I was being a good mother. But sitting there in the gathering darkness, I wondered if Richard had been right all along. Had I created this? Had my generosity bred entitlement? Had my money become a substitute for requiring respect? My phone sat silent on the side table. No call from Derek to apologize, no message from Connor to explain. Nothing but the tick, tick, tick of the clock and the fading light through the windows. I opened my phone and pulled up my banking app, something I rarely did from home. I preferred to handle finances from my office, to keep that world separate from my personal life. But tonight, I needed to see something concrete, something I could control. I navigated to the credit card accounts, specifically the supplementary cards I had issued 5 years ago to Derek and Nora for emergencies. The transaction history loaded slowly, line by line. Gucci, $800. Louis Vuitton, $2,300. Four Seasons Resort, Maui, $7,000. Le Bernardin, $412. Soul Cycle membership, $350 monthly. Dr. Richardson Aesthetics, Botox, $800. I scrolled and scrolled, not a single charge that looked like an emergency, not one hospital bill or car repair or actual crisis, just lifestyle, just keeping up appearances, just living the life they wanted on my dime while resenting me for providing it. The combined limit on these cards was $85,000 monthly. $85,000 that renewed every billing cycle. I pulled up the last 6 months of statements and did quick mental math, a skill that had never left me even in retirement. $430,000. In 6 months, they had charged $430,000 to these emergency cards. My hands were steady now. My heart rate had dropped to 98. Something was crystallizing in my mind, something cold and clear and absolute. I thought about Derek's face at the entrance. I thought about those 176 pairs of eyes watching my humiliation. I thought about Nora's smirk and her designer dress and her talk about healthy boundaries. And then I thought about one more thing. When Derek had given his little speech about establishing independence, about not wanting to be controlled by my money anymore, where exactly did he think the bar bill for this reception was being charged? Where did he think the hotel rooms for out-of-town guests were going? All those expenses that came up during wedding weekends, all those last-minute costs? 3 touches on my phone screen, that's all it took. Block card 1, block card 2, done. The system confirmed immediately. Cards ending in 4729 and 8841 have been temporarily blocked. To unblock, please contact customer service or use the app. I set my phone down and leaned back in Richard's chair. The reception would be starting soon. Cocktail hour, open bar. Derek would probably go up to order drinks, flash that supplementary card with my name on the account, and watch it get declined. In front of Ashton Whitmore, Isabel's father, the senior partner at Massachusetts' most prestigious law firm. In front of all those guests who had watched him turn his mother away, I should have felt guilty. A good mother would have felt guilty. But what I felt instead was something I had never experienced before, something that settled over me like cool water over a burn. Satisfaction. Cold, clear, absolute satisfaction. At 9:32 that evening, my phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice more before I answered, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. "Hello, Derek." "Mom." His voice was high, stressed, verging on panic. "Mom, what happened to the credit cards?" I looked out the bay window at my dark garden, at the life I had built with Richard's help, at the empty house that represented decades of success and sacrifice, and I smiled. "I blocked them," I said simply. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then, Derek's voice exploded through the speaker. "You what? Mom? You can't just— I'm at Connor's wedding. Do you have any idea what just happened? The card got declined at the bar, in front of everyone. Ashton Whitmore actually pulled me aside and offered to lend me money. He felt sorry for me, Mom. Sorry for me." I stood up from Richard's chair and walked to the window, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my son's panic with a detachment that surprised me. "I'm aware of what happened, Derek. I blocked the cards approximately 3 hours ago." "But why?" "Jesus, Mom, this is insane. I think you know why." My voice remained calm, almost clinical. "You stood in front of 176 people and told me I wasn't welcome at my own grandson's wedding. The wedding I paid for. Every single penny of it. $180,000, Derek. So I decided if my presence wasn't wanted, perhaps my financial presence wasn't wanted either." I heard him cover the phone, heard muffled voices, Nora's sharp tone cutting through, and then he was back. "Mom, please, we can talk about this later. Just unblock the cards. I'm being humiliated here. Now you know how I felt at 3:45 this afternoon." I ended the call and turned off my phone. The thing about building a company from nothing is that you learn very quickly how to separate emotion from strategy. You learn that sentiment is a luxury you can't afford in the boardroom, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. Richard taught me that, or maybe I taught him. After 30 years of marriage, it had become difficult to remember who had influenced whom. I met Richard when I was 24 years old, working as a junior analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm in Manhattan. He was 30, already a rising star in financial strategy, with the kind of confidence that came from competence rather than arrogance. We worked on a project together, a struggling manufacturing company that needed restructuring, and I fell in love watching him dissect balance sheets and rebuild business models. He made numbers tell stories. He made me believe I could do the same. We married 2 years later. By the time I was 28, I knew I wanted to build something of my own. Richard encouraged it, helped me draft the business plan for Sinclair Financial Consulting in our tiny apartment while I was 8 months pregnant with Derek. The irony wasn't lost on me now. I had built an empire while carrying my son, had balanced morning sickness with investor meetings, had nursed him between conference calls. Derek arrived in March of 1990, 6 weeks before I officially incorporated my company. He was a colicky baby, difficult, demanding every ounce of attention. Richard and I took turns walking him through the nights, both of us exhausted, both of us determined. I hired a nanny when Derek was 3 months old so I could focus on building the business. I still remember the guilt, that crushing, suffocating guilt that society teaches mothers to carry like original sin. Was I abandoning my baby? Was I being selfish? Would he grow up damaged because I chose ambition alongside motherhood? But we made it work. Sinclair Financial grew slowly, carefully, building a reputation for turning around struggling companies with surgical precision. Richard's firm and mine operated in complementary spaces. He focused on corporate strategy for established businesses. I specialized in crisis management and restructuring. We became a power couple in Connecticut's business community. The Colonial in Greenwich, the private school for Derek, the summer house in the Hamptons. These weren't handed to us. We built them through 18-hour days and sacrificed weekends and relentless focus. Derek grew up surrounded by success, but somehow never absorbed the work ethic behind it. He saw the results, the nice house, the good school, the vacations, but missed the foundation. When he was 7, he asked me why I worked so much when we already had enough money. I tried to explain about purpose, about building something meaningful, about the satisfaction of solving complex problems. He looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "But I just want you to be home like Tyler's mom." That comment haunted me for years. Was I damaging him? Should I have scaled back, been more present, chosen motherhood over ambition? Richard always said no. "You're teaching him that women can build empires," he told me. "You're showing him what capability looks like. That's valuable, Margot." But what Derek seemed to learn instead was that money solved problems. When he struggled with math in 5th grade, we hired the best tutor. When he wanted to quit soccer halfway through the season, we let him and enrolled him in tennis instead. When he got his first speeding ticket at 17, Richard handled it with our attorney. Every obstacle in Derek's path, we smoothed away. Richard died of pancreatic cancer when Derek was 31. 4.5 years ago, though some days it felt like yesterday and other days like a lifetime. The diagnosis to death took 8 months. 8 months of hospital rooms and experimental treatments and watching the strongest man I'd ever known waste away to nothing. Derek came to visit maybe a dozen times during those 8 months. He always had reasons. Work commitments, Nora wasn't feeling well. They had plans they couldn't cancel. I never pushed. I told myself he was dealing with his grief in his own way, that watching your father die is traumatic, that everyone processes differently. The truth I didn't want to face was that Derek had never been good with discomfort. Even as a child, he avoided anything unpleasant, dropped out of activities when they got challenging, changed friend groups when conflicts arose, quit his first 2 jobs within months because the workload was unreasonable. Richard used to worry about it. "The boy needs to learn resilience," he'd say. "He needs to fail at something and figure out how to get back up." But I always interceded, always smoothed the path, always made sure Derek didn't have to struggle the way Richard and I had struggled. I told myself I was being a good mother. I told myself I was protecting my only child. Really, I think I was trying to compensate for all those hours at the office, all those school plays I missed, all those times I chose work over his soccer games. After Richard died, Derek became my entire world. My business was already sold. We'd closed that deal 2 years before Richard's diagnosis, netting $47 million that we'd planned to use for early retirement, travel, enjoying the life we'd built. Instead, I spent that retirement sitting in hospital rooms and then, after, rattling around in this enormous house full of memories. Derek came to me 6 months after the funeral. He'd had an idea for a business, he said, a digital marketing consultancy targeting small businesses. He just needed startup capital, $85,000 to get off the ground. I wrote the check the same day. It felt good to have a project, something to invest in, a way to stay connected to my son. The business failed within 18 months. Derek blamed the market, timing, bad luck. Never his execution, never his planning. I told him it was fine. These things happen. Lots of entrepreneurs fail on their first try. I didn't mention that Richard and I had built our businesses during a recession, or that I'd seen hundreds of companies fail, and most of the time it came down to leadership and discipline, not luck. 2 years later, Derek came back with another idea: a lifestyle blog network. He needed $120,000 this time. I wrote that check too. That business lasted 14 months. The third business, some kind of social media influencer management company, required $115,000. That one collapsed in 10 months when Derek's biggest client left for a competitor. 3 businesses, $320,000, 0 return. But I told myself I wasn't investing in businesses. I was investing in my son. I was staying connected. I was being supportive. I was showing him I believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Then there were the smaller things. The credit card bills he couldn't quite cover. $87,000 I paid off when he was 28. The down payment on his house when he married Nora. $150,000 I gifted them. The supplementary credit cards I issued 5 years ago for emergencies with their $85,000 monthly limits. I did the math once, late one night, about a year ago, sitting in this same library with a bottle of wine. Between the failed businesses, the debt payments, the house down payment, the cars I'd bought them, the vacations I'd funded, the credit card charges, I had given Derek and Nora approximately $1.2 million over the past decade. $1.2 million. And what had I received in return? Weekly phone calls that felt obligatory. Monthly dinners where Nora made passive-aggressive comments about my extravagant lifestyle and how some people just can't help showing off their wealth. Birthdays remembered 3 days late. Mother's Days acknowledged with grocery store flowers. But I told myself it was fine. Family wasn't transactional. Love wasn't a ledger. I was being a good mother, a generous grandmother. I was ensuring my family was comfortable. When you have money, you share it with the people you love. That's what you do. Except somewhere along the way, Derek had stopped seeing it as generosity and started seeing it as control. Or maybe, and this was the thought that kept me awake some nights, he had started feeling emasculated by his dependence on me. Maybe every check I wrote reminded him that he couldn't provide for his family the way Richard had provided for ours. Maybe Nora whispered poison in his ear about being a kept man living off his mother's success. I thought about the supplementary cards, about those $430,000 in charges over 6 months. The vacations, the designer clothes, the expensive restaurants. They were living a lifestyle they couldn't afford on Derek's inconsistent $40,000 to $60,000 annual income from his current strategic consulting work. They were living my lifestyle, funded by my money, while resenting me for providing it. Connor's college had been entirely funded by me, a trust I'd set up when he was born. $200,000 for 4 years at Boston University. Then last year, when he turned 21, I'd given him access to his trust fund, $500,000 to start his adult life. I'd watched Derek's face when I told him about the trust, watched something flicker there that might have been jealousy or might have been shame that his mother could give his son $500,000 when he himself couldn't contribute a penny to his child's future. And then 6 months ago, Connor had called to tell me he was engaged. I was thrilled. Isabel seemed lovely, educated, kind, from a good family. I offered immediately to pay for the wedding. "Whatever you want," I told Connor. "This is your special day. Don't worry about the cost." The costs had added up quickly. Designer dress, $15,000. Venue rental at the Whitmore estate, $45,000. Catering for 176 guests, $62,000. Band, flowers, photography, hotel rooms for out-of-town family. The total climbed to $180,000 before I even blinked. I paid every invoice without complaint. This was my grandson's wedding. This was family. But nobody knew I was paying for it. Derek and Nora had somehow let the Whitmores believe that they were footing the bill. They'd taken credit for my generosity, presented themselves as successful enough to host a nearly $200,000 event, all while charging their daily Starbucks runs to my credit cards. Sitting in the library that night, I finally understood. They wanted my money, but not my presence. They wanted the lifestyle I provided, but not the reminder that I was providing it. They wanted to be seen as successful and independent while remaining completely dependent on me. And I had enabled every bit of it. Every check I wrote without conditions, every debt I cleared without consequences, every credit card I issued without limits, I had taught them that my money came without strings, that they could take and take and take without ever having to show gratitude or respect or even basic decency. Richard had been right all those years ago. I had spoiled our son. And in trying to show love through generosity, I had accidentally taught him that love was transactional, something to be extracted rather than reciprocated. The truth crystallized in that moment. Derek didn't bar me from the wedding to protect my health or establish healthy boundaries. He did it because having me there would have reminded everyone, including himself, that none of this was real. That the life he presented to the Whitmores, to the other guests, to his Instagram following, was built entirely on his mother's wealth. My presence was inconvenient truth, and so I had to be eliminated. I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages. I deleted them all without reading them and opened my banking app again. Those supplementary cards weren't coming back on. Not tomorrow, not next week, not ever. It was time my son learned what Richard had tried to teach him 20 years ago. You don't get to have the benefits without the responsibilities. You don't get to cash the checks while spitting in the face of the person who wrote them. And you definitely don't humiliate the woman who gave you everything in front of 176 witnesses and expect her to keep funding your fantasy life. The next morning, I woke at 6:30, as I had every morning for the past 40 years. Discipline doesn't disappear just because your world has shifted on its axis. I made coffee in the kitchen that still felt too large for one person, carried it to the sunroom, and finally allowed myself to look at my phone. 89 text messages, 53 missed calls, 12 voicemails. I sipped my coffee and started reading. The texts from Derek had evolved throughout the night. The first ones, sent around 9:30, were panicked. "Mom, please, this is so embarrassing, just unblock them for tonight." By midnight, they'd turned angry. "I can't believe you would do this on Connor's wedding day. This is unbelievably selfish." By 3 in the morning, they'd become desperate. "Please call me back. We need to talk about this like adults." Nora's messages, sent from a number I didn't recognize, she must have blocked me on her regular phone months ago, were less varied in tone. Every single one dripped with venom. "You're a manipulative narcissist who can't stand to see anyone happy. This is elder abuse, and I'm documenting everything for our lawyer. Derek is having a panic attack because of you. I hope you're proud of yourself." There were also messages from numbers I didn't recognize. I scrolled through them with growing disbelief. Someone named Ashley. "Mrs. Sinclair, I'm a friend of Nora's. What you did last night was disgusting. Derek is a good man, and you're ruining his life." Another from Michael. "Wow, just wow. I always heard you were controlling, but this is next level. Get help." Nora had rallied her social media followers. She must have posted something, spun some narrative where I was the villain. I opened Instagram, something I rarely used, and navigated to her profile. Sure enough, there it was, posted at 11:47 the previous night. The post showed Nora and Derek in their wedding attire, looking somber. The caption read, "When family weaponizes money to control you. When generosity comes with strings so tight you can't breathe." Today should have been about celebrating Connor and Isabel's love, but instead we're dealing with financial abuse from someone who can't accept healthy boundaries, sending strength to anyone else dealing with toxic family dynamics. You're not alone. It had 4,000 likes and 637 comments. I scrolled through them, each one a small knife. "Your MIL sounds like a nightmare. Stay strong. You don't owe her anything just because she has money." This is why I went no contact with my own mother. Not one person in those 637 comments knew the truth. Not one person knew that the wedding they were celebrating in the comments had been entirely funded by the toxic mother-in-law. Not one person knew about the $1.2 million I'd given over the years, or the credit cards with $85,000 monthly limits, or the fact that Derek and Nora's entire lifestyle was subsidized by my financial abuse. I set my phone down and looked out at the garden. November had stripped most of the trees bare, leaving skeletal branches against a gray sky. I had always loved this view. Richard and I used to sit here on Sunday mornings, reading the paper, planning our week. Now it just felt like a reminder of everything I'd lost. My phone rang. Connor. I hesitated, then answered. Grandma? His voice was strained, uncomfortable. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you? How was the rest of your wedding? It was good. Beautiful. Isabel loved everything. He paused. Grandma, Dad told me what happened. About the credit cards. Did he tell you what happened before that? At the entrance to the estate? Longer pause. He said they'd explained to you beforehand that maybe it would be too stressful for you to attend. Because of your age and everything. He said you'd agreed to skip it, but then showed up anyway and made a scene. I closed my eyes. Of course that's what he'd said. Connor, that's not what happened. Nobody explained anything to me beforehand. I showed up to your wedding with a gift for you and Isabel, and your father stopped me at the entrance in front of everyone and told me my name wasn't on the guest list. Wait, what? No, that's not... He stopped. Grandma, are you sure? Because Dad was really specific about how you'd agreed to this. I'm absolutely sure. I wouldn't lie to you, Connor. But why would Dad lie? That doesn't make sense. This was the moment. I could let it go, preserve Connor's illusions about his parents, maintain family peace, or I could tell him the truth and risk alienating my grandson right along with my son. Connor, did your father tell you who paid for your wedding? Silence. Connor? He said he and Mom had been saving, that they wanted to do this for me. Your father doesn't have savings, sweetheart. He has debt. $127,000 in credit card debt that I discovered last night when I was reviewing accounts. I paid for your wedding. Every penny of the $180,000. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band. Your father didn't contribute a single dollar. I heard his breathing change. Are you serious? Completely serious. And the gift I was bringing you yesterday was the deed to a $2.3 million apartment in Manhattan. It's already in your and Isabel's names. No mortgage. I was going to surprise you. Oh my God. His voice cracked. Grandma, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this. Dad told me that you'd been acting erratic, that you'd been making comments about the cost of the wedding, that you told him it was too much stress for someone your age, and maybe you should sit this one out. He lied to you, Connor. Jesus. I heard him moving, heard a door close. Isabel's family thinks we're broke. Well, not broke, but her dad made some comment about how nice it was that my parents were willing to invest so much in our future. He thought Dad paid for everything. That's why he offered to lend Dad money when the card got declined. He thought Dad had just maxed out from the wedding expenses. Your father has been living beyond his means for years, funded by credit cards in my name that were supposed to be for emergencies. I blocked them last night because I decided I was done subsidizing the lifestyle of people who can't even show me basic respect. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry. I should have called you myself. I should have checked. Dad told me you were on board with everything, and I just believed him. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Mom kept saying it would be better this way, that it would be less stressful for everyone, especially you. That you'd understand because you're so reasonable. And you always put family first. Family first. The words hit me like a slap. I had put family first every single day for 35 years. I had sacrificed and provided and supported, and this was what family first had gotten me. Connor, I want you to know something. None of this is your fault. You did nothing wrong. I love you very much, and that apartment is still yours. The deed is signed. But I need you to understand that things are going to be different going forward with your father. I get it. I totally get it. God, Grandma, when I think about you standing there at the entrance... His voice broke. Everyone saw. Everyone was talking about it. I was inside getting ready and someone came and told me there'd been some kind of drama with you, but Dad said he'd handled it, that you'd just gotten confused about the time, and he'd sent you home to rest. He told everyone I was confused? That's what people were saying. That you'd shown up at the wrong time or something. That you seemed disoriented. There were all these whispers about whether you were okay, whether you were having, memory problems. Memory problems. My son had let people believe I was developing dementia rather than admit he'd barred me from the wedding. The humiliation I'd felt yesterday doubled, then tripled. I'm 58 years old, Connor. I ran a multi-million-dollar company until 3 years ago. My mind is perfectly sharp. I know, Grandma. I know. I'm going to talk to Dad. This is so messed up. After we hung up, I sat with my coffee going cold and thought about Derek's strategy. He hadn't just rejected me. He'd attempted to destroy my credibility. If people thought I was having cognitive issues, then my version of events could be dismissed as the confused ramblings of an elderly woman. It was calculated. It was cruel. And it was exactly the kind of thing Nora would have suggested. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Derek again. I declined it. 2 minutes later, another call. Declined. Then a text. Mom, please, we need to talk about this. You're overreacting. Overreacting. The word made something hot and sharp rise in my chest. I had been humiliated, lied about, barred from my own grandson's wedding, and characterized as mentally declining, but I was overreacting. I called my lawyer. Richard Ashford had been our attorney for 20 years, handling everything from business contracts to estate planning. He answered on the second ring. Margot, I heard about yesterday. I'm so sorry. Of course he'd heard. Everyone had heard. Richard, I need to review some documents, specifically the deed to Derek and Nora's house. The one you provided the down payment for? Yes. I want to know exactly what's in that contract. Give me an hour. I'll pull the file and call you back. He called back in 45 minutes. Margot, you're going to want to hear this. When we drafted that gift agreement 8 years ago, you insisted, against my advice actually, on including a reversal clause. Do you remember? I searched my memory. 8 years ago, Derek was 27, newly married, and I'd wanted to help them establish stability. Vaguely. Remind me. The clause states that if there is a substantial breach of familial trust or deliberate harm caused to you by either party, you retain the right to reclaim the monetary gift. At the time, I thought you were being overly cautious. You told me you just wanted protection in case something went catastrophically wrong. Can that clause be activated now? Potentially. It would require proving substantial breach of trust, which could be argued given the circumstances. But Margot, are you sure you want to go there? This is your son's home. They have a mortgage on the remaining balance. A mortgage they can't afford without my supplementary credit cards. Richard, I need you to do something else. I want a complete audit of every penny I've given Derek over the past 10 years. Every business investment, every debt payment, every gift. I want documentation of everything. That's going to take a few days. I have time. I'm not going anywhere. After hanging up with Richard Ashford, I opened my laptop and did something I rarely did. I deep dived into social media. Nora's Instagram was a carefully curated fantasy. Photos of her and Derek at expensive restaurants, wearing designer clothes, taking tropical vacations. Every image captioned with inspirational quotes about gratitude and manifestation and living authentically. In one post from 3 weeks ago, she stood in front of a Louis Vuitton store with shopping bags, captioned, "Treat yourself, you deserve it. Self-care, your luxury lifestyle." Those shopping bags had been purchased with my credit card. That self-care had been funded by my money. And now she was painting me as an abusive, controlling monster on that same platform, to those same followers who liked and commented on her luxury lifestyle without knowing the truth behind it. I clicked on Derek's profile. He posted less frequently than Nora, but his account told a similar story. Professional photo shoots, expensive watches, posts about building an empire, and entrepreneurial mindset. His bio read, digital strategist, entrepreneur, building something meaningful, with my money, with my support, while blocking me from my own grandson's wedding. Over the next 2 days, Derek's attempts to reach me became increasingly desperate. The calls came every few hours. The texts evolved from angry to pleading to manipulative. Mom, you're destroying our family. Connor is upset because of what you're doing. Nora is having anxiety attacks. I'm going to lose the house because of you. Nora's messages, sent from various new numbers and fake Instagram accounts, remained consistently vicious. She called me a narcissist, a sociopath, a bitter old woman who couldn't stand to see her son happy. She threatened legal action, public exposure, elder abuse charges. She sent me screenshots of news articles about financial abuse and family estrangement, always with a little message. This is you. This is what you're doing. On the third day, Connor called again. Grandma, I talked to Isabel's parents. They confirmed what you said. They saw the whole thing at the entrance. Mrs. Whitmore said she was horrified. She said it was the most uncomfortable thing she'd ever witnessed at a wedding. Did you talk to your father? Yeah. He's sticking to his story. Says you, and he had an understanding that you're twisting things now because you're upset. But Grandma, I found something. What? I was looking through our wedding expenses because Isabel and I wanted to send thank you notes, and I needed to know who paid for what. Every single receipt, every contract, every invoice, they all have your name on them, your credit cards, your checks. Dad didn't pay for anything. He lied to me. He lied to Isabel. He lied to her whole family. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, sweetheart. Don't apologize. I'm 23, not a child. I should have asked more questions. He paused. Isabel wants to thank you personally for the apartment. She's been crying about it. She said her parents never would have let us accept such an extravagant gift if they'd known. But since it's already done, she wants you to know how grateful we are. You're welcome, Connor, both of you. You deserve to start your life together without the burden of Manhattan rent. Dad's saying you're trying to buy my loyalty, that you're using money to manipulate the family. What do you think? Long silence. I think you gave me a wedding gift, an incredibly generous one. And I think Dad's been living off your generosity for years while telling me he's a successful entrepreneur. I think I don't know my own father as well as I thought I did. On the fourth day, Richard Ashford sent over the audit. The document was 63 pages long. It detailed every financial transaction between me and Derek over the past decade, complete with dates, amounts, and purposes. The total came to $1,874,000. Not the $1.2 million I'd estimated. I'd forgotten about several smaller gifts. The car I'd bought Derek for his 30th birthday, the furniture I'd purchased for their house. Nearly $2 million in 10 years to a man who had just barred me from his son's wedding. I was reading through the audit when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I considered not answering. But curiosity won. I looked through the peephole and saw Derek standing on my porch, looking haggard. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, hair uncombed. Behind him, parked in the driveway, I could see Nora sitting in their car, phone in hand. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Mom! His voice cracked. Please, we need to talk. I don't think we have anything to talk about, Derek. Don't say that. Please don't say that. You're my mother. We can work through this. Can we? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you've already decided what kind of relationship you want with me. One where you take my money but exclude me from important family events. One where you lie about me to other people, suggest I'm mentally declining, and let your wife call me a narcissist on social media. He flinched. I didn't know Nora was going to post that. I told her to take it down. It's been up for 4 days, Derek. It's still up right now. She's upset. She says things when she's upset. And what's your excuse? What's your reason for telling Connor that I'd agreed to skip the wedding? For telling guests I seemed confused and disoriented? I never said you seemed disoriented. Someone else must have. Don't lie to me anymore. Please. Don't insult my intelligence by continuing to lie. His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into bed between Richard and me after a nightmare. Then he straightened up, and I saw something harden in his face. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I asked people to give you the benefit of the doubt, to assume you were confused instead of deliberately excluded, because the alternative was admitting that I barred my own mother from my son's wedding, and how would that have looked? So you sacrificed my reputation to protect yours. I was trying to make the best of a bad situation. A situation you created, Derek. A situation Nora and I created because we needed space, because your constant presence in our lives, your constant generosity, your constant fixing of everything, it was suffocating us. We can't grow as people when you're always there with your checkbook, solving every problem before we even have a chance to try. Is that what the $127,000 in credit card debt was about? Growing as people? His face went white. How do you know about that? I know everything, Derek. I hired an attorney. I had everything audited. Every penny I've given you, every debt I've paid, every gift, every investment in your failed businesses. $1,874,000 over 10 years. While you were telling people you were a successful entrepreneur, those businesses weren't failures. They were learning experiences. They were failures funded by my money that you now resent me for providing. You can't have it both ways. You can't take millions of dollars from me and then claim I'm controlling for giving it to you. That's not— He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. Mom, please, can we just reset? Can we start over? I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong, but blocking the credit cards, threatening the house, you're escalating this into something it doesn't need to be. I'm not threatening anything, Derek. I'm simply stopping. I'm stopping the flow of money you don't appreciate. I'm stopping the enabling that's prevented you from ever having to build a real life. I'm stopping the dynamic where I provide everything and you resent me for it. So what? You're just cutting me off? Your own son? I'm letting you grow as a person. Isn't that what you said you needed? He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing his options, trying to figure out the right thing to say to get me to change my mind. Finally, he settled on vulnerability. His eyes filled with tears. Mom, I can't lose the house. We'll be homeless. Is that what you want? Your son and daughter-in-law on the street? You won't be on the street. You'll do what millions of people do. You'll downsize. You'll get an apartment you can actually afford on your income. You'll build a life within your means. But Mom, go home, Derek. Tell Nora to take down that Instagram post. Tell Connor the truth about who paid for his wedding. And figure out how to live without my money. I can't believe you're doing this. Dad would be so disappointed in you. The invocation of Richard's name was designed to wound me, and it worked, but I didn't let Derek see it. Instead, I looked at my son, this 35-year-old man still trying to manipulate his mother, and felt something inside me finally break free. Your father would be disappointed in you. He told me years ago that I was spoiling you, that you needed to learn the value of struggle. I didn't listen. I thought I was being a good mother. But all I did was raise a man who thinks he's entitled to everything and grateful for nothing. I closed the door before he could respond. Through the window, I watched him walk back to the car where Nora was waiting. I saw her face as he got in, saw her mouth moving rapidly, saw his head drop into his hands. Then they drove away, leaving my driveway empty except for fallen leaves and the first hints of winter. That evening, I received an email from Richard Ashford with the subject line, Urgent. Nora's attorney contacted me. I opened it with a sense of inevitability. Of course, Nora had hired an attorney. Of course, this was escalating into legal threats. The email contained a forwarded letter from a law firm I'd never heard of, Miller and Associates, located in Stamford. The letter was addressed to me, care of Richard Ashford's office. Dear Ms. Sinclair, we represent Nora Sinclair in matters pertaining to financial abuse and elder manipulation. Our client has documented evidence of your attempts to control her family through monetary coercion, including the recent weaponization of credit access during a family celebration. We are prepared to pursue legal action, including restraining orders and a formal complaint to Adult Protective Services regarding your erratic behavior and potential cognitive decline. We strongly suggest you reinstate all financial support immediately and seek medical evaluation. Failure to comply will result in legal proceedings. Sincerely, Patricia Miller, Esq. I read it 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First, disbelief. They were actually threatening me with Adult Protective Services, suggesting I needed medical evaluation for cognitive decline. Second, anger. The sheer audacity of threatening legal action after living off my money for years. Third, and most unexpectedly, amusement. This letter was so overreaching, so transparently manipulative, that it revealed desperation rather than strength. I called Richard Ashford immediately. Did you read this? I did. It's nonsense, Margot. Complete nonsense. Patricia Miller is known for taking questionable cases and making dramatic threats. Most of it's bluster. But they're threatening to report me for cognitive decline. Let them. You'd undergo evaluation and pass with flying colors, and then you'd have grounds to sue them for defamation. They won't actually do it. They're hoping the threat alone will scare you into turning the money back on. What should I do? Nothing. Don't respond. Don't engage. I'll send them a formal letter tomorrow explaining that their characterization of the situation is entirely inaccurate and that any further harassment will result in legal action on our end. But Margot, I need to ask you something. What? How far are you willing to take this? Because once we start down this road, it's going to get ugly. Derek and Nora will fight. They might try to turn Connor against you. They might go public with their version of events. Are you prepared for that? I looked around my empty library, at Richard's chair where I'd spent so many evenings, at the photos of Derek throughout his childhood covering the walls. Was I prepared to lose my son completely? Was I prepared to become the villain in his story, the cautionary tale he'd tell about toxic parents and financial abuse? Yes, I heard myself say. I'm prepared. All right then. I'll draft our response. And Margot? You might want to start documenting everything. Every text message, every voicemail, every interaction. If this goes to court, you'll want evidence. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness and thought about what I'd just committed to. A legal battle with my own son, public accusations of financial abuse, the possibility of permanent estrangement. 6 months ago, even 6 days ago, I would have backed down. I would have apologized, turned the credit cards back on, swallowed my hurt, and maintained peace at any cost. But something had fundamentally shifted inside me that afternoon at the Whitmore estate. Standing there with 176 people watching my humiliation, holding a $2.3 million gift I'd never get to give, listening to my son tell me I wasn't wanted, something in me had finally broken. Or maybe it had finally healed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Isabel. Connor gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to tell you that I'm horrified by what happened at our wedding. My parents are horrified. We had no idea you'd been excluded or that you'd paid for everything. Connor and I want to take you to dinner this week if you're available. We need to thank you properly for the apartment and for everything else you've done. Please say yes. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something warm unfold in my chest. Then I typed back, I would love that, Isabel. Thank you for reaching out. Her response came immediately. Thank you for being so generous, even when my in-laws don't deserve it. Connor is really struggling with all of this. He looks up to his dad so much, and finding out about the lies has been hard. But he wants you to know he's on your side completely. On my side, as if this were a war with sides to choose. But I supposed it was, wasn't it? Derek and Nora had made it a war the moment they decided my presence was inconvenient, that my money was welcome, but I was not. Another text arrived, this time from Derek. Nora's attorney says you're going to regret this. Last chance to make this right before everything gets worse. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing. I documented everything. The day of the wedding, the conversation at the entrance, Derek's exact words, the witnesses present. I downloaded all of Nora's Instagram posts, including the one about financial abuse. I saved every text message, every voicemail, every email. Richard Ashford had said to document everything, and I was nothing if not thorough. Around midnight, as I was finishing my documentation, my phone rang. Connor. Grandma, I'm sorry to call so late. Dad just left my apartment. He's out of his mind. What happened? He showed up drunk, crying, saying you're destroying the family. He kept saying he's going to lose everything because of you. Isabel and I didn't know what to do. We let him rant for about an hour, and then I finally told him he needed to go home and sleep it off. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, Connor. Don't apologize. He's the one who should be apologizing. Grandma, he told me some stuff tonight. About the credit cards, about how much money you've given him over the years. He said it like you were controlling him, but all I could think was that he's been taking your money while treating you like garbage. Your father is struggling right now. He's facing consequences he's never had to face before. Good. Maybe he should struggle. Maybe he should figure out how to be an actual adult instead of depending on his mom to solve everything. Connor's voice was thick with anger and disappointment. I'm embarrassed, Grandma. I'm embarrassed that I come from this, that my dad is this person. He's still your father, sweetheart. Yeah, well, you're still his mother. And that didn't stop him from humiliating you in front of everyone at my wedding. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my house and realized something. I wasn't alone in this. Connor and Isabel were with me. Richard Ashford was with me. Even the Whitmores, from what Isabel had implied, were horrified by Derek's behavior. I had allies. I had support. Derek and Nora had assumed I would fold immediately. That threatening legal action and public shame would send me scrambling to restore their access to my money. They had miscalculated badly. They had forgotten, or perhaps never knew, that I had spent 30 years building a business in a male-dominated industry. I had faced down investors trying to steal my company. I had negotiated with corporate raiders. I had survived Richard's death and come out the other side still standing. I was Margot Sinclair. I had built an empire from nothing, and I certainly wasn't going to be bullied by my own son and his manipulative wife. I opened my email and sent a message to Richard Ashford. Draft whatever response you think is appropriate to Nora's attorney. Make it clear we won't be intimidated, and move forward with reviewing the deed to their house. I want to know all my options. Then I poured myself a glass of the Chateau Margaux that Richard and I had been saving for a special occasion. A bottle worth $3,000 that had been sitting in our wine cellar for 12 years. If this wasn't a special occasion, I didn't know what was. I raised the glass to Richard's empty chair. You were right, my love. I spoiled him. But I'm fixing it now. Better late than never. The wine was exceptional. Rich, complex, perfectly aged. I savored every sip while I waited for whatever came next. Richard Ashford's response to Patricia Miller arrived in my inbox 3 days later, copied to me for review before he sent it. It was a masterpiece of legal precision, polite but devastating, dismantling every claim in Nora's letter with facts and documentation. He attached copies of bank statements showing the nearly $2 million I'd given Derek over the years, receipts for the wedding, and even screenshots of Nora's Instagram posts showing the luxury lifestyle funded by my credit cards. The letter concluded, "Our client has not engaged in financial abuse. She has simply ceased to fund the lifestyle of adults who repaid her generosity with public humiliation. Any further baseless accusations will be met with litigation for defamation and harassment." "Send it," I told him. The response from Derek came within hours, not through attorneys, but directly to my phone. A voicemail, his voice shaking. "Mom, what are you doing? Your lawyer sent us all our financial records. You gave them everything. Nora is losing her mind. She's saying we need to go public. Tell our side of the story before you destroy our reputation. Please, Mom, please don't do this." I saved the voicemail and didn't call back. That evening, Nora made good on her threat. She went public. The Instagram post was long, detailed, and carefully crafted to paint me as a monster. It began with a photo of her and Derek looking devastated, sitting on their couch, hands clasped together. The caption started, "Trigger warning. Financial abuse, family trauma. I'm shaking as I write this, but I need to speak my truth." She went on to describe a controlling matriarch who had used money to manipulate her son for decades, who couldn't accept healthy boundaries, who had weaponized credit cards to punish them for trying to grow as independent adults. She claimed I had demanded to be at Connor's wedding, despite being told it would be too stressful for my health, that I'd caused a scene when gently turned away, and that I'd retaliated by financially destroying them in the middle of a family celebration. The post included screenshots, carefully selected text messages where I'd offered to pay for things over the years, edited to look like I was constantly inserting myself into their lives with money. She'd cropped out all context, all the times they'd asked me for help, all evidence of their requests and my responses. "This is what narcissistic abuse looks like," the post concluded. "This is what happens when you try to establish boundaries with a toxic parent. We're consulting with attorneys and considering all legal options. If you've experienced financial abuse from a parent or in-law, please know you're not alone." Within 6 hours, the post had 20,000 likes. Within 12 hours, it had been shared to Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Nora's follower count jumped from 47,000 to 93,000. The comments section became a war zone. Most people supported her. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." My MIL does the same thing. Money is the ultimate control tool for narcissists. Stay strong. You don't owe her anything. But there were other voices, too, asking questions. "Wait, she paid for your whole lifestyle and you're mad about it? So she gave you money for years, and you're calling that abuse?" Maybe don't bite the hand that feeds you. Those questioning voices were quickly attacked by Nora's supporters. You don't understand narcissistic abuse. Financial abuse is real abuse. Stop victim blaming. Connor called me frantic. Grandma, have you seen it? It's everywhere. People are messaging me. My coworkers are sending me screenshots. Isabel's mom called asking what's going on. I've seen it. It's all lies. The way she's describing everything. It's complete fiction. She's making you sound like a monster. I know, sweetheart. We have to do something. We have to tell the truth. Isabel wants to comment on the post, tell people what really happened at the wedding. No. My voice was firm. Don't engage. Don't comment. Don't fight on social media. That's what Nora wants. A public spectacle where everyone takes sides and the truth gets lost in the noise. But Grandma, people are believing her. They think you're this evil, controlling person. Let them think it. The people who matter know the truth. You know it. Isabel knows it. Richard Ashford knows it. That's enough. But privately I was shaken. I'd spent decades building a reputation in the business community, maintaining dignity and class in all situations. Now thousands of strangers were calling me a narcissist, an abuser, a toxic parent. My name was being dragged through digital mud by my own daughter-in-law, and there was nothing I could do about it without making things worse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed scrolling through the comments on Nora's post, each one a small cut. Around 3 a.m, I found myself in Richard's study, sitting at his desk, crying for the first time since the wedding. Not quiet, dignified tears, ugly, gasping sobs that shook my whole body. I had lost my son. Not gradually, not over years of growing apart, but suddenly and completely. He had chosen Nora and her narrative over any relationship with me. He had allowed her to publicly destroy my reputation. And there was no coming back from this. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Sinclair, this is Vivian Whitmore. I hope you don't mind Connor giving me your number. I saw the Instagram post. I want you to know that Ashton and I witnessed what happened at the wedding. We know the truth. If you need character witnesses for any legal proceedings, we will absolutely testify on your behalf. What your daughter-in-law is doing is disgraceful. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I read the message 3 times, fresh tears streaming down my face. Then another text arrived, this time from a number I recognized. Elizabeth Chen, a colleague from my consulting days whom I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Margot, someone sent me a link to that Instagram post. I know you. I worked with you for 15 years. That description doesn't match the woman I know even slightly. I'm here if you need anything. And I mean anything. Legal support, character reference, or just someone to talk to. Don't let them break you. Over the next few hours, more messages came in. Former clients, business associates, even a few people from Richard's firm who remembered me from company events. All of them expressing support, offering help, telling me they knew the post was nonsense. By morning, I had received 27 messages from people in my professional circle. People who had seen my character over years, who knew my integrity, who understood that Nora's version of events was a fabrication. It didn't undo the damage of 20,000 strangers believing I was a monster, but it reminded me of something important. I had spent decades building genuine relationships based on respect and competence. Nora had spent 8 years building a social media following based on carefully curated lies. My reputation among people who actually knew me was solid. Her reputation was digital smoke. Richard Ashford called at 8 a.m. Margot, we need to talk strategy. That Instagram post is potentially defamatory. We could pursue legal action. What would that accomplish? It would force her to retract or face a lawsuit. It would put her on the defensive instead of you. It would also make me look like I'm trying to silence her, like I'm the powerful bully crushing the vulnerable daughter-in-law. The narrative would become, rich woman uses lawyers to intimidate young couple speaking their truth. That's probably accurate, he admitted. So what do you want to do? I want to know about the house. Can we move forward with reclaiming that down payment? Legally, yes. The clause is valid. But Margot, if you do this, Derek will lose his home. This will end your relationship permanently. The relationship ended when he barred me from Connor's wedding. Everything since then has just been the aftermath. Silence on the other end. Then, all right, I'll start the paperwork. But you should know, this will get messy. They'll fight it. It could take months, maybe over a year to resolve. And it will be expensive for everyone involved. I have time and money. Do they? No, they don't. Then proceed. 2 days later, Derek and Nora received formal legal notice that I was exercising the reversal clause in the deed agreement. They had 90 days to either pay me back the $150,000 down payment or vacate the property so it could be sold to recoup my investment. Derek's phone call came within an hour of them receiving the notice. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "You're actually doing this. You're actually trying to take our house. Mom, I don't even know who you are anymore. This isn't the person who raised me. This is someone cruel and vindictive and, Jesus, Mom, we have nowhere to go. We can't afford anything else. You're going to make us homeless because your feelings got hurt? Because my feelings got hurt." As if public humiliation, lies about cognitive decline, and being called a narcissistic abuser on social media were just hurt feelings. I saved the voicemail with all the others. Nora's response was more predictable. She posted another Instagram update, legal abuse update. "My toxic mill is now trying to take our house." Yes, you read that right. Because we set boundaries, she's attempting to make us homeless. This is what narcissists do when they lose control. They escalate until they destroy you. Our attorney says we have options. We're not giving up. This post got even more engagement than the first. 32,000 likes. Comments flooded in. "She's actually evil. Take her to court. Start a GoFundMe, I'll donate. Document everything for the judge." But there were more questioning voices this time too. "Wait, she gave you the down payment and now wants it back? That's not really taking your house. That's reclaiming her own money. Did you sign something agreeing she could do this? Maybe don't publicly trash someone who can legally take back what they gave you." I watched the comments roll in with a strange detachment. This was my life now. A public spectacle, my family relationships playing out for strangers' entertainment. Part of me wanted to respond, to share my side, to post the receipts showing the nearly $2 million I'd given them over the years. But Richard Ashford's advice echoed in my mind. Don't engage. Don't fight on social media. Stay above it. Connor and Isabel came to dinner at my house that week. Isabel hugged me at the door. A real hug, tight and warm. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm managing." "Managing is not okay. You should be thriving. What they're doing to you is horrible." Over dinner, a simple pasta dish I'd made. Nothing fancy. Connor told me he'd confronted Derek again. I showed him all the receipts from the wedding, showed him proof that you paid for everything. I asked him how he could lie to me like that. You know what he said? What? He said technically he hadn't lied because he'd always planned to pay you back someday. That in his mind, it was just a loan, so telling people he paid for it was just a matter of timing. Connor's voice was bitter. The mental gymnastics are incredible. He's desperate, I said. Desperate people rationalize anything. He's also delusional. He keeps talking about how he's going to sue you, how he's going to prove you're incompetent, how he's going to get guardianship over you and your assets. Nora's convinced him they can win, that a judge will see you're the problem. Isabel shook her head. My father says they don't have a case. He's a lawyer, he knows. He says if anything, you have grounds to sue them for defamation. Those Instagram posts are full of false claims. I'm not suing them, I said. I'm just stopping. Stopping the money, stopping the enabling, stopping the cycle. They can post whatever they want. The truth will come out eventually. After they left, I sat in my library with a cup of tea and thought about Derek's threat to seek guardianship. It would never work. I had no signs of incompetence. My medical records were clear. My finances were impeccably managed. But the fact that he would even consider it, that he would contemplate having his own mother declared incompetent to gain access to her money, told me everything I needed to know about how far he'd fallen. My phone rang. Derek again. This time, I answered. Mom. His voice was different, defeated, exhausted. Can we please just talk? Face to face? No lawyers, no social media, just you and me? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to maintain my boundaries, to let the lawyers handle everything. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the little boy who used to make me Mother's Day cards with crayon drawings, needed to hear what he had to say. All right, I said. Tomorrow. 2 o'clock. My house. You come alone, or we don't talk at all. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. The next afternoon, Derek arrived exactly on time. He looked terrible, gaunt, unshaven, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, not the carefully curated image he presented online. He stood on my porch, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. I let him in and led him to the living room. We sat across from each other, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Derek broke the silence. Nora left me. Of all the things I'd expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. What? She left. Packed her stuff 3 days ago and went to her mother's in New Jersey. She said she can't be with someone who can't provide for her, who's losing everything because he's too weak to stand up to his mother. His voice cracked. She said I'm pathetic. I didn't know what to say. I'd never liked Nora, had watched her manipulate Derek for years, but I hadn't wanted this. Or maybe I had. Maybe some part of me had known that once the money dried up, Nora would disappear. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Are you? Because this is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted to show me who she really was. You wanted me to see that she only cared about the money. I wanted you to respect me. That's all I ever wanted. He put his head in his hands. I know. God, Mom, I know. I screwed up so badly. The wedding, the things we said about you, letting Nora post all that stuff. I was so focused on trying to prove I could be independent that I destroyed everything. Why did you really bar me from the wedding, Derek? The truth. He looked up, eyes red. Because Ashton Whitmore made a comment the week before. He was talking about successful people, about building wealth, and he mentioned you. Said you were one of the most impressive entrepreneurs he'd ever met. And I just felt so small, so inadequate. Here was my son getting married into this prestigious family, and I had nothing to show for myself except a mother who had to pay for everything. Nora convinced me that if you weren't there, I could pretend for one day that I was the success, that I was the one providing. So you sacrificed me for your ego. Yes, he said it simply, without defense. And I lost everything because of it. Nora, the house, Connor's respect. You. I have nothing left, Mom. I'm going to lose the house. My credit is destroyed. I don't even know if I can get an apartment without your help. And I don't deserve your help. I know that. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw not the man who had humiliated me, but the boy I'd raised, the boy Richard and I had loved and protected, and yes, spoiled. I'd played a role in creating this situation. I'd given him everything so easily that he'd never learned to value anything. You're right, I said quietly. You don't deserve my help. Not after what you did. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. But, I continued, I'm going to give you something anyway. Not money. A chance. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You have 90 days to figure out your life. Get a real job. Find an apartment you can afford. Build something real. If you can do that, if you can show me you're willing to actually grow up and take responsibility, then we can talk about rebuilding our relationship. Not the old relationship where I fix everything. A new one, where we're both adults who respect each other. And if I can't, then I follow through with reclaiming the house and we're done, permanently. Derek wiped his eyes. What about the credit cards? The money for rent? Nothing. You figure it out yourself. That's the whole point. He sat there for a long moment, and I watched him process it. This was the first time in his life I'd ever given him a real ultimatum. The first time there were actual consequences with no safety net. Finally, he nodded. Okay, I'll try. Don't try. Do it. After he left, I stood at the window watching his car disappear down the street, and I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear or anger, but from the weight of what I'd just done. I'd given Derek one last chance, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to know I'd done everything possible before walking away from my only child permanently. 90 days. In 90 days, I would know whether Derek Sinclair was capable of becoming the man his father had hoped he'd be. The first 30 days were silent. Derek didn't call, didn't text, didn't reach out at all. I monitored his and Nora's social media from a distance. She had stopped posting about me, apparently having moved on to content about healing from narcissistic relationships and rebuilding after betrayal. Her follower count had plateaued around 100,000. She'd turned her family drama into a brand. Connor updated me weekly. Dad got a job, he told me on day 23. Nothing fancy. Account manager at a mid-sized marketing firm. $48,000 a year. He started last Monday. That's good, I said, and meant it. He's also looking at apartments. One-bedroom places in Norwalk, Bridgeport, places he can actually afford on his salary. On day 47, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a check for $500 and a handwritten note on plain paper. Mom, this is $150,000 divided by 300. If I pay you $500 every month for the next 25 years, I can pay back the down payment. I know it's not enough and it's too slow, but it's what I can afford. I got the job. I found an apartment. Moving in next week. I'm trying. Derek. I held that check for a long time. $500. To a man making $48,000 a year with credit card debt and moving expenses, $500 was substantial. It was sacrifice. It was effort. I didn't cash it. I put it in a drawer in Richard's desk, next to the documentation of everything else. On day 63, Derek called. Mom, I moved into the apartment yesterday. It's small, really small, but it's mine. I'm paying for it myself. That's wonderful, Derek. I wanted to ask, can I come by? I'd like to show you pictures, and I wanted to talk about something. He came over that Sunday. He looked different, thinner but healthier somehow, less polished but more genuine. The apartment photos showed a modest one-bedroom in Norwalk, simply furnished with IKEA pieces. No designer anything, no luxury. I've been thinking a lot about Dad, he said as we sat in the living room with coffee. About what he would say if he could see how I turned out. I don't think he'd be proud. Your father loved you very much. He did. But he also called me out when I was being lazy or entitled. You never did that, Mom. You just fixed things. I know. I'm sorry for that. Don't apologize. I'm not blaming you. Not anymore. I'm 35 years old. At some point, my failures became my own responsibility. He set down his coffee cup. I've been seeing a therapist. A real one. Not the one Nora picked who just told us what we wanted to hear. This one's been making me examine my patterns. Why I always quit when things get hard. Why I blamed you for helping me instead of being grateful. Why I let Nora control the narrative about you. What have you learned? That I was scared. Scared of being compared to you and Dad. Scared of failing. So I never really tried at anything, because if you don't try, you can't fail, right? And then I resented you for succeeding where I was too afraid to even attempt. He looked at me directly. Barring you from the wedding wasn't about healthy boundaries. It was about removing the evidence of my inadequacy. If you weren't there, I could pretend for one day that I was the successful one. I know. You told me that before. Yeah, but I understand it differently now. Before, I was just confessing. Now, I actually get how messed up that was. How cruel. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Derek said, Nora's engaged. What? To some finance guy she met at a networking event 3 weeks after leaving me. She posted about it yesterday. Big ring, fancy dinner, whole thing. Her caption was about finally finding a man who values her worth. How do you feel about that? Honestly? Relieved, because it proves you were right about her. She didn't love me. She loved what she thought I could provide. And when I couldn't provide it anymore, she moved on immediately. He shook his head. I wasted 8 years of my life with someone who saw me as a meal ticket. Those years weren't completely wasted. You have Connor. Yeah, Connor, who barely speaks to me now. Can't blame him. He'll come around. He's hurt, but he still loves you. Give him time. Derek nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wanted to show you this. It's my budget. Every dollar accounted for. Rent, utilities, food, transportation, student loan payments, credit card minimums. I have $17 a month left over after essentials. $17. But it's mine. I earned it, and I'm managing it. I looked at the carefully handwritten budget, at the tight columns of numbers, at my son's attempt to finally take control of his life. I'm proud of you for doing this. I'm 90 days from losing my house, Mom. I don't know if you're going to follow through with taking it, but I need to know. Is there any way we can work something out? Maybe I keep paying you monthly until it's paid off? I know 25 years is ridiculous, but, Derek, I'm not taking your house. He stopped mid-sentence. What? I was never going to take it. The legal notice was to show you consequences, to make you understand that actions matter. But I don't want your house. I want you to sell it, use the equity to pay off your credit card debt, and start clean. The down payment was a gift. I'm not taking it back. But the letter from your lawyer said, I know what it said. Consider it a wake-up call, which it seems to have been. Derek put his face in his hands and started crying. Not quiet tears, deep, shaking sobs. I don't deserve that. I don't deserve any kindness from you. No, you probably don't. But I'm your mother, and despite everything, I still love you. We sat there while he cried, and I thought about Richard, about how he would have handled all of this, probably with more toughness than I had, but also with the same underlying love. We had both wanted Derek to succeed. We had just disagreed on how to help him get there. On day 90, the day the ultimatum technically expired, Derek closed on the sale of his house. After paying off the mortgage and his credit card debt, he had $32,000 left. He put it in savings and didn't touch it. It's my emergency fund, he told me. My real emergency fund, not your credit cards. Connor and Isabel hosted Thanksgiving dinner that year at their new Manhattan apartment, the one I'd given them. It was small and lovely, and Connor had insisted I come. Derek was invited too, awkwardly, with the understanding that Nora's name wouldn't be mentioned. Sitting around their dining table, eating turkey and stuffing, watching Connor and Derek attempt to rebuild their relationship, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but peace. The Instagram posts about me eventually faded from relevance, buried under new content and new dramas. Nora's profile showed her new relationship, her new luxury lifestyle, her new narrative. I didn't follow her and didn't check regularly. She was Derek's past, not my present. My life became quieter. I volunteered with organizations supporting women entrepreneurs, offering mentorship and occasionally funding. I had lunch with Connor and Isabel twice a month. I saw Derek every few weeks for coffee, conversations that were sometimes stilted but gradually becoming more genuine. 6 months after the ultimatum expired, Derek brought me flowers on Mother's Day. Not grocery store flowers, a real bouquet from a florist, probably $25 he couldn't really afford. Thank you for not giving up on me, he said, even when I gave you every reason to. I thought about all the years of checks and bailouts and enabling, about how my generosity had been a prison for both of us, keeping him dependent and me exhausted, about how the hardest thing I'd ever done wasn't building a company or surviving Richard's death, but letting my own son fail so he could learn to succeed. You're welcome, I said. Now let's not do this again. He laughed, a real laugh. Deal. I kept the check for $500 in Richard's desk drawer, never cashed. It reminded me of the day Derek finally started trying, the day my son began to grow up. Sometimes love means giving everything. Sometimes it means giving nothing. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you figure out the difference before it's too late. I sold the Greenwich house a year later. Too many memories, too much space. I bought a cozy townhouse in Stamford, 15 minutes from Connor and Isabel, 30 minutes from Derek's apartment. Close enough to be present, far enough to maintain boundaries. The last box I unpacked was a photo from Derek's 5th birthday. Him covered in chocolate cake, laughing, with Richard and me on either side. We looked so young, so hopeful, so certain we were doing everything right. We weren't. We made mistakes. I made mistakes. But sitting in my new home, with my grandson nearby, and my son finally learning to stand on his own feet, I realized something. It's never too late to change the story. It's never too late to set boundaries, to demand respect, to choose dignity over keeping the peace. I was Margot Sinclair. I had built an empire. I had survived loss. And I had saved myself and my son by finally learning when to say no. The credit cards stayed canceled. The supplementary accounts stayed closed. And my relationship with Derek slowly, carefully, began to rebuild on a foundation of mutual respect instead of financial dependence. It wasn't the family I'd imagined, but it was real, and that made it worth everything.